Good afternoon, everybody. Here to Finer Wood. Want to share my thoughts on the Woodpeckers Slab Flattening Mill Pro extended version. Prior to this, I had my own homemade version that could do, up to maybe 5-foot slabs pretty comfortably. And then I started doing much bigger slabs like this 14-foot one here on a more consistent basis. So I decided to upgrade my epoxy pour table underneath here and the flattening table as well. As part of that upgrade, I got rid of the homemade Slab Flattening Mill Pro or slab flattener and went with the Woodpeckers Slab Flattening Mill Pro extended version. All right, we're going to start this review with an overview of the mill in action, and that's going to be followed by a short clip of a close-up of the front of the router tray as it moves horizontally back and forth across the slab. And that should give you some good reference points as we run through the review exactly what we're talking about on the different parts of the slab mill. So here you go. Enjoy, and the review and the different components will follow after these short clips. So I'll share my thoughts with it. I'll start off with the instructions and putting it together. I would tell you the instructions, if I'd put instructions top of the line, like the SawStop PCS saw instructions, I'd say those are kind of the top level. Lots of pictures, easy to follow. So those are good instructions. I'd put the instructions for this mill somewhere in the middle. Very few diagrams or pictures to show you where things are going. And so understanding what parts, what nuts, what bolts go where can be a little confusing in it at times. However, this is a very simple tool to put together. And it really isn't that hard to figure out the instructions, but still just the quality of the instructions judged by the amount of words in there instead of pictures and diagrams. I put it somewhere in kind of a mid-level quality for the instructions. It will take you a little while to put this together till you figure out which bolts are going where and which pieces. Luckily, there's not a lot to it, so that's going to help you. All right, the next thing I'll talk about is, I think, the main function of the slab flattening mill, and that is, can you get a nice, same plane, all the way down, level, moving or action with this slab flattening mill on a consistent basis? And I would tell you yes. These rails on the side here, slide this down. These rails that are on the side, very sturdy extruded aluminum, strong, stable. You're not going to get, I think, up and down. I haven't gotten any, and I've done a number of slabs now with it. And I've done epoxy river tables. I've done just wood live edge slabs without any epoxy. And so I've seen about everything on this that I do anyways. And I can tell you they hold up really well. And in addition to the sled here that slides across, right, these crossbars, so I'll refer to across the slab as the horizontal action, and up and down the slab end to end is the vertical. So vertical, very easy to slide back and forth, not a lot of effort. horizontally, the same thing. The number one thing that's going to determine how easy this is for you to slide is going to be, I say number one thing, but it's a lot of factors outside of the mill itself. So you're talking about your router bit, how sharp is it? You're talking about the power of your router. You're talking about how much are you trying to take off? And also, you know, what are you going through? How hard is it? And if you're exerting a lot of force and it's taking a lot of physical effort to move this back and forth, I would tell you something's not right in that setup. Either your bit's too dull, you're trying to take off too much, you're going through something too hard, your router's doesn't have enough power on it. Something outside of the mill probably isn't going right. So you would need to look at that. But the mill itself, sliding action, very easy, not a lot of effort. And it's stayed that way. It slides as well now as it did for me when I first put it together. And that's after sliding over all the epoxy shavings, after the wood, the sawdust, everything else getting into the the strips of tape they use as glide strips underneath here. So it still works well on that. Now I'd like to talk about the dust shroud. I'll slide this down so you can see it a little bit more. You can see this plastic skirt here underneath. I would tell you that, you know, that it works well. I don't really know what they could use better. They could use a brush which would be softer. And I think that might actually function more because it's going to flex as you go across the wood. And it, I think, would do enough to allow air in to make the dust collection work a little bit better. So this dust shroud itself, the hard plastic skirt, also on the sides here, you'll see like every other one bends out, one bends in. And I just get a lot of pieces flying out to the side. I believe it probably captures 60 or 70%, maybe 60% of the dust and particles. And the rest of it's, you know, because of this dust shroud, it doesn't go far, but it still is going to cover your table. It's going to be down in the slots of your table, and you're going to get a lot of extra cleanup that you're going to do. However, I did not find a lot of fine particles in the air. It managed to capture that. What really got away was the bigger pieces. So that was comforting. I still wear a face mask or a filter with this because it is getting some in the air. And I'll take the camera here and I'll show you the... All right, right here we have on the back, we have the tubes where the dust collection comes out from the shroud. I call this the back, maybe you call it the front, but on the side with the two ports for the dust collection tubes. And this is all comes with it except for this rubber clamp hose here that I added that. Or actually, sorry, it did come with it as well. So these work pretty good, but again, I think the shroud has a big impact on whether or not these things function well. Sometimes you'll see like right here where the shroud is even all the way across, air can't get through it. And the dust collection, like I have a Laguna Seaflux 2, so roughly around 1,100 cubic feet per minute at the port on the dust collector. It's a little bit less out here with the flex tube and so forth, but still a lot of power and a lot of air being moved. But this, when it gets solid like that, air can't get through, and there's no dust getting sucked up without airflow. So it does inhibit some of the dust collection at times with that plastic skirt. Again, I think a brush-like skirt might be better, but I haven't used a brush-like skirt, so I don't know if that's going to allow the bigger pieces to fly out and go farther or what it's going to do. They do sell this without the shroud, so somebody who has it without the shroud could try that. I personally am not going to. I'm going to keep that shroud on. And then next I'm going to show you what the shroud does to that sliding action because of the stiffness of this plastic skirt. All right, we were just talking about this plastic skirt and the impact on the airflow and some other things. One of the other things I've found with this plastic skirt is because it's so stiff, if you have a router or a bit that's a little bit shorter and you need to keep your sled a little closer to the slab, closer than what the height of the skirt is, that skirt, as you slide it back and forth, this front, you know, it grabs the wood and pushes back under, right here, how you see it push under. And because it's so stiff, a lot of times it will slightly lift up either the front of the sled if you're going forward, or the back of the sled if you're going this way. So that I have found will cause a couple of high spots or maybe a divot in the slab itself as you're flattening it. So I've had to make a point of making sure when I come out, I come all the way across the slab and that I start it, and you just have to go slow till you get over that flex right there. You can kind of see that. I'll show it again. See right there how you see the little gap come up right here as it lifts it, and you can hear it. So that's one issue I've had with the plastic shroud. It hasn't been enough that I don't use it, because I find its effectiveness at containing all the large bits works really well. So something to be aware of when you're using it, and you'll have to be conscious, or else you can cause some problems on your slab. All right, next up, I'm going to talk about the dust tubes again here and the connector to your main line. So I'm going to turn the camera around. We'll show you what we're talking about there. All right, so what we're talking about is this connector right here. It's more of a straight with the 45 angle split off on it, or I guess maybe, yeah, it's about a 45 split off on it than it is a Y. I have no idea the reason why that was chosen, no pun intended, but I find that it doesn't work so good. I think a true Y would be better, and I'm just going to replace this eventually. Once it starts to kind of annoy me enough, I'll just replace this piece with an actual Y. And the reason it gets that way is because when it's straight up, you can see that your dust collection goes off that way. Well, when you go down, which is fine if your dust collection main line comes from that direction, right, such as mine is, but when I get down to that end of the slab and it's coming from the other direction, it pulls on it kind of awkwardly and it doesn't work so well. I think a straight up Y would be much better. Again, it's pretty minor, that's trivial, easy to replace on your own, but again, not really sure why they went with this instead of an actual Y on the connector. But again, a minor thing, but you know, this thing's not cheap, and something small like that, which is fairly cheap for them to do, I would think they could add that in. The other thing I would add is these hose clamps. I mean, they're very effective, they're good, but these kind of clamps are a bit of a pain to use, especially when they're just big enough. So getting these hoses, when you're installing it, getting these hoses onto the ports down here and up here, and then, you know, connecting them all is challenging. I had to lubricate both the port and up here to get that to slide on. You've got to cut away some of the flexible part of the tubing so that it doesn't bind up underneath, because it's a very tight fit with these hoses. If we're using clamps, I don't think it needs to be that tight of a fit. But again, between that and that was probably a little frustrating actually getting those put together. I don't know if anybody else had those kind of problems, but I think what would help is a different kind of clamp, because when you're trying to get something on that's challenging and you're trying to put this kind of a clamp on, the clamp falls off or falls apart quite often. Just a regular hose clamp, I think, would be good with just maybe a thumb screw on the end. You could it'd be so much easier. All right, next what I'd like to talk about is adjusting the sled, and whether you're the tray holding the router, how high or low, because you can adjust it up and down. There's these 4 red knobs, 2 on this side, 2 on the other side. You take those off, and then this bar right here and this bar right here comes off, and then there's 4 red knobs on the inside. You take those off, and then you can lift the tray up or down. They have, it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different peg slots for these bolts in here to sit on to raise it up. So you could raise that tray. Right now I have it 1 above the lowest setting, so it could probably go down about that much more, and the tray could come all the way up even to here. So that's where your router would sit. That would be a pretty massive bit to reach down that deep through past all these rails and down to the wood, but depends on what you have, right? So I find the trays easy to adjust. I don't often have to adjust it because I use this router and it has quite a bit of travel up and down on it to raise and lower that bit. So not very often do I have to adjust the tray, and I do find it, for how often I adjust it, it's easy enough. It's something that I think you could do fairly simple. It only takes me a minute or two, and we're all set. Now, for router mounting, I'm only going to talk about this router. It's the one I've used on it. I love this Triton. It's powered, just fantastic router. Its height adjustability and functions of it are, I can't say enough good things about it. However, there's a wide range of routers that fit this. It's got a number of holes. It comes with the bolts to attach your router to it, and there's a big selection. You can go online, you can look at it, the compatibility with different routers, but I would tell you that every major router, it has the holes lines for it, and has the bolts to mount that router. All you're going to do is take off your base plate on your router, mount it to this tray, use their screws to go through the tray, and put it in there, and you're all set. And again, they have all the holes pre-drilled. If you get a router that is not compatible with this, I wouldn't think it'd be very hard to drill your own holes and mount it. The challenge might be they don't provide the screws for it if it's not compatible. However, you know, that can't be that hard to get screws for it. I've done things like that in the past, and you can find it. Take a little bit of research to find the right screws, the right length to mount that, because you obviously don't want your screws sticking down with bolts and washers in between, getting some depth down below. You want them to be flush against the tray on the bottom. But that's something you can do if you have a router that's not compatible. All right, nothing more really to talk about. I was just going to show you how easy this thing goes apart and comes back together for this. I'm not going to take the side rails off because I'm going to use it again, and I don't want to take it down just to reset it up and get everything coordinated. Even though I'd tell you it probably takes me, I could take it down and set it back up in less than 10 minutes. But I'm just going to leave these rails up, but I will show you for the tray itself with the router on it. Comes right off. You just pick it up, and then I have a little stand that it sits on, so the router shroud, the plastic router shroud, doesn't get bent up. And then when I'm really not using it for a while, it hangs on the wall. I have it just hang sideways like that, hangs out. But for now, I just slide it under the table. And in the instructions, they will show you, it's a, I think, 8 by 12, just 3.5 inch tall, rectangular wood tray you make to hold that up off the ground. And then next for this, it just rests on there. You just pick it up, I leave it like this, and I either set it off to the side, or I hang it on the wall just like this. For now, I'm putting it back there because I don't need it right now, but I will shortly, so just putting it out of the way. And that's it. And now I have my table, I have these rails here. I do a lot of work leaving these rails on and doing work on the table, the slab flattening, sanding, whatever I'm doing. I'll do routing, whatnot, because these rails are out of the way. When I take my table down, I take these rails off. There's 2 pieces I have here because it's the extended version. I just take them apart, which is 1, 2, 3, 4 screws, and I stand them up in the corner as well, both sides. All right, so nothing fancy here, camera-wise, setup, just me and my thoughts and my experience with it. You can see it's dirty. I use it a lot. I'm dusty. I was using it earlier. I've done this slab with it just recently. I'm very happy with this. It's pricey. It is not cheap, but it is worth the money. The consistency, the reliability I get from it, the ease of use, the portability for me to take it apart in a small shop like I have and put it in the corner is fantastic. And then I use my table for other stuff. So repeatability as well, to just consistently get that same height, that same depth of cut all the way down, like I've done a 14-foot slab here, all the way down this 14-foot slab is fantastic. I don't have to worry about it. I'm more concerned about the amount I'm taking off. I'm concerned with the sharpness of my router bit. I am not thinking about the slab flattening mill. So again, I'm very happy with it. I think it's worth the money. Could it be cheaper? I wish it was, but it is what it is. You're going to get what you pay for. So 2 thumbs up from me. Very happy with it.